One day, the U.S. Navy was escorting ships through the Strait of Hormuz under fire. The next President Trump hit the pause button. Sounds like weakness, right? Wrong. On May 4th, Iran threatened neutral tankers, targeted a South Korean cargo vessel, and basically dared the world to push back. 2 days later, 2 American destroyers sliced straight through the kill zone. 6 to 7 Iranian fast attack boats became wreckage on the bottom. 2 U.S.-flagged merchant ships made it through untouched. Then Trump announced the pause. Not because Iran won, because the message had already been sent, loud and clear. Right now, more than 1,550 commercial vessels and 22,500 seafarers are still trapped inside the Gulf. Gas prices at your pump are feeling the shock. European factories are watching the fuel market. Asian supply chains are holding their breath. But Trump did not back down. He changed the game. The escort mission was never the main event. It was the opening act. What comes next is the real squeeze. By the end of this breakdown, you will understand why Iran just handed America the cleanest, most justified reason to tighten the noose around Tehran. Stay with me. This is bigger than one strait. Iran did not lose the Strait of Hormuz because America had bigger ships. That is the surface story. The deeper failure started before the first destroyer even moved. Tehran made the classic mistake weak regimes make when they confuse pressure with power. On May 4th, they threatened neutral tankers in public, expanded their claimed waters, and put a South Korean cargo vessel under threat. They did it in the open, where every insurer, ship owner, Asian buyer, European planner, and American voter could see it. That single move changed everything. Iran was no longer just flexing near its coastline. It became the hand around the throat of global trade. And once that image locked in Washington, received the cleanest justification it could ask for. Legitimacy is ammunition in modern conflict. Iran wanted fear. America wanted permission. Tehran handed it over on a silver platter. Think about it. The United States no longer had to sell another Middle East war to a tired public. It did not need vague talk about regime change or nation building. It only needed 5 simple words: commercial ships must pass. Farmers get it, truckers get it, families watching gas prices at the pump get it. That line cuts through politics like a knife. Iran thought chaos would split America from its allies. Instead, it fused them together. South Korea saw one of its own ships put at risk. Japan watched its energy lifeline shake. Europe saw fertilizer markets come under pressure. Gulf states saw fire they did not start burning next to their ports. Even countries tired of Washington suddenly needed safe shipping more than they needed to stay neutral. Every trapped vessel became fresh evidence against Tehran. 1,550 commercial ships and 22,500 seafarers stuck in the Gulf turned into a floating courtroom. This is where the genius of the American response showed. Iran wanted to play gatekeeper. Washington made them look like hostage takers. Iran drew red lines on maritime maps. Washington turned those lines into ransom notes. Iran wanted captains to ask Tehran for permission. America made the world ask a better question. Why should any regime control an international artery in the first place? From that moment, Project Freedom stopped being just a naval operation. It became a political trap with warships attached. Iran pulled the trigger on intimidation. Washington picked up the evidence, framed it, and turned on the courtroom lights. That is why Iran's first loss was not tactical. It was moral, legal, and strategic, and it happened before the next American missile ever left the rail. This mistake opened the door for everything that followed. Project Freedom was never about moving a couple of tankers through the Strait of Hormuz. That was the cover story. The real mission was to rip the mask off Iran's greatest bluff in front of the entire world. Tehran wanted every captain to believe the Strait now belonged to the Revolutionary Guard. Washington entered those waters to prove the opposite. When the American destroyers USS Truxtun and USS Mason powered into the corridor, Iran had turned into a kill zone. The question stopped being theoretical. Could the IRGC actually enforce its threats, or was it only performing for television? That single transit forced an answer. US-flagged commercial vessels made it through untouched. Iranian fast boats that pushed too close were destroyed. 6 to 7 of them now lie on the bottom as burning reefs. The message moved faster than any missile across the Gulf. That transit shattered something far more valuable than steel. It shattered the myth that Iran controls Hormuz. For years, Tehran sold the story that this narrow 21-mile choke point was its emergency switch over the global economy. One warning from the IRGC and tankers would freeze. One threat from Tehran and markets would panic. One red line on a map and the world would ask permission. Then the United States crossed that line. Not with speeches, not with diplomatic poetry, with warships, fighter jets overhead, Apache helicopters hunting boats, A-10 Warthogs ready to fire 3,900 rounds per minute, and nuclear submarines below carrying hundreds of Tomahawks. Iran can threaten. Iran can posture. Iran can create fear. But when a determined naval escort moves through the channel, Tehran has to choose shoot and risk devastating punishment or stand down and expose the bluff. That is why the escort mattered. It was not transportation, it was psychological demolition. Iran's entire strategy depends on making Hormuz feel closed, haunted, and untouchable. Mines might be there. Drones might be overhead. Fast boats might swarm. Fear is the weapon. Project Freedom attacked that fear directly. The American message was sharp. Hormuz is dangerous, but it is not closed. That difference is everything. Closed water belongs to the bully. Dangerous water can be contested, escorted, watched from the sky, and challenged by a navy that refuses to blink. Every serious player understood the signal instantly. Shipping companies realized waiting was not their only option. Insurance markets saw proof that passage was still possible. Asian energy buyers understood Iran had not become the landlord of their fuel. European planners saw the shock did not have to become permanent. Gulf states watched Washington step in and put real limits on Tehran's game. This was classic role reversal. Iran wanted to play gatekeeper. Washington made them look like hostage takers. Iran drew red lines on maritime maps. Washington turned those lines into ransom notes. Iran wanted captains to ask Tehran for permission. America made the world ask a better question. Why should any regime control an international artery in the first place? Once that question was asked in public, Iran had already lost ground. Not territory credibility. The Revolutionary Guard can harass ships and stage threats. But credibility requires enforcement. If you claim control and cannot stop a crossing, the claim becomes a joke. If your red line gets crossed and nothing decisive happens, the red line becomes evidence against you. That is the hinge of the whole operation. The escort broke the lie. It proved Iran could make Hormuz dangerous, but could not make it theirs. And once that point was proven, Washington did not need to repeat the same move forever. The mission could shift from demonstration to domination. The pause was not retreat. It was the next calculated step. America stopped moving ships because it had started moving Iran. The pause was not retreat. It was pressure changing shape. That is the part Tehran desperately wanted the world to misunderstand. One day, American escorts smashed through Hormuz and shattered Iran's claim of control. The next day, President Trump hit pause on the movement of ships. On television, it looked like the guns had gone quiet. In strategy, it meant something much colder. Washington had already proved the door could be forced open. Now it was time to stop moving ships and start moving Iran. This is why the blockade matters more than the pause. Project Freedom could slow down for diplomacy, but the iron grip on Iranian ports never loosened. The ships paused. The squeeze did not. More than 1,550 commercial vessels and 22,500 seafarers remained trapped inside the Gulf. Every day of blocked oil sales drained hard currency Tehran could not easily replace. Tehran was not being rewarded. It was being placed inside a room with one exit, a pen on the table, and the sound of the lock turning behind it. Sign the deal or keep suffocating. This is coercive diplomacy at its most refined. First, you demonstrate overwhelming force. Then you prove the enemy cannot stop you. Then you pause just long enough to make the next choice belong entirely to them. If Iran fires again, it will escalate. If Iran refuses serious talks, it owns the blockade. If Iran signs America, gets what it came for without firing the next expensive shot. That is not confusion, that is sequencing. The escort delivered the message in 48 hours. The pause now forces Iran to carry the full weight of the answer. Iran's deepest problem is that time no longer works in its favor. A short dramatic war helps regimes like this. It gives them flags, martyrs, fiery speeches, and an external enemy to blame. A prolonged blockade does the opposite. It offers no dramatic explosion for television. It delivers quiet, relentless humiliation, delayed cargo, empty ports, salary pressure, black market currency, panic, and street-level frustration. A bomb creates a crater you can rally around. A blockade creates doubt. And doubt is poison for a regime built on fear and control. Every hour the blockade holds, the question inside, Iran grows louder. If Hormuz was our greatest weapon, why are we the ones bleeding? If we control the Strait, why must we beg for relief? The Revolutionary Guard can still brag on camera, but it is much harder to explain why their strongest card has become their own cage. Trump's pause was especially dangerous for Tehran because it denied them the clean propaganda of all-out war while keeping the economic knife pressed against their ribs. Washington could tell markets it was giving diplomacy a chance. It could tell allies it was acting responsibly. It could tell American voters it was avoiding another endless Middle East conflict. And at the same time, it sent Tehran the only message that mattered. We already showed we can open Hormuz whenever we want. Now you decide how long you want to stay locked in. This is where the operation shifts from demonstration to pure leverage. The escorts embarrassed Iran. The blockade cornered it. Project Freedom proved the Revolutionary Guard could make Hormuz dangerous but not closed. The continuing blockade turns that fact into negotiation power. Tehran once tried to force the world to ask permission. Now Tehran is the one waiting for a way out. The pause was never a weakness. It was the moment America stopped proving its strength and started cashing it in. The escort broke the lie. The blockade holds the knife. The negotiating table has become the only place Iran can still pretend it has any control left. America stopped moving ships because it had already started moving Iran. And once a regime is being moved against its will, the real battle is no longer in the water. It is in the signature. Do not mistake Hormuz for a local crisis. It is a warning shot fired across the entire world map. What happened in that narrow 21-mile strip of water is being studied right now in Beijing, Moscow, Pyongyang, and every capital that has ever dreamed of turning geography into a weapon. Iran tried the model in full public view, sees a choke point threaten neutral commerce, spike global prices, and force stronger nations to negotiate on your terms. The real danger is not that Iran blocked ships. The real danger is whether other powers conclude the cost was worth it. If Tehran can turn Hormuz into a political toll booth and survive with only a pause, the playbook spreads. China looks at the Taiwan Strait and South China Sea. Russia looks at the Black Sea, smaller regimes, eye canals, undersea cables, and energy terminals. Suddenly, the map itself becomes a racketeering business. That is why Washington could never treat Project Freedom as a routine convoy. A convoy moves ships. A precedent moves history. If America had allowed Iran to rewrite the rules in Hormuz, it would have signaled to every rival that international waterways are only international until someone with missiles objects. That is not a maritime issue. That is the slow death of the global order. Beijing understands this perfectly. Taiwan sits beside sea lanes that feed the factories of Asia and the shelves of America. If fear alone can bend shipping routes in Hormuz, China now asks a dangerous question. Why invade? When you can simply make passage feel impossible, Moscow is watching closely too. Russia already weaponized grain and energy in the Black Sea. Hormuz shows the upgraded version. You do not need to conquer the ocean. You only need to make the ocean feel unsafe. America's answer had to be global. Choke points are not bargaining chips. They are arteries of the world economy. You do not get to mine them, tax them, or redraw them just because your regime needs leverage. If you try, the response will not stop at escorts. It will target the leverage itself. Hormuz delivered the final warning. Iran thought it was testing one strait. It was actually testing a rule that protects the entire map. Washington's reply was clear. Turn an artery into a hostage zone, and America will not just reopen the passage. It will build the cage around you. Project Freedom was never just about reopening one strait. It was a masterclass in 21st century power. America proved it could smash Iran's bluff, then pause at the perfect moment to turn military force into lasting leverage. The escorts broke the myth. The blockade applied the pressure, and the pause placed the signature pen directly into Tehran's hand. Iran now faces a simple, brutal choice. Sign a deal that curbs its nuclear track and ends the Hormuz blackmail, or keep bleeding behind a blockade that Tehran created with its own mistake. Every other option only buys time while the cage gets tighter. That is how a serious superpower protects the global order in the modern age. Not with endless wars, not with empty speeches, but with measured, intelligent force that gets maximum leverage without rushing into maximum chaos. Your gas prices, your grocery bill, European factories, and Asian supply chains all depend on one principle. No regime gets to hold the arteries of the world economy hostage. Hormuz was not the end, it was the opening statement. The message has now been sent to every capital watching. Choke points are not yours to weaponize. International waterways are not political toll booths. And if you try to close them, America will not just break your grip. It will build the cage around you. Now the ball is in Iran's court. Was Trump's pause a brilliant strategy or a dangerous gamble? Drop your take below. In the next breakdown, we follow the deal Iran may be forced to sign and why Beijing is studying every move. Stay sharp, stay informed. I'll see you in the next one.